Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded, and both the slide set as well as a recording of the webinar itself will be available for download to all registered participants at the conclusion of the webinar itself. So let's just jump right in. Amid the continuing coronavirus pandemic and the recession that it's triggered, connecting with consumers has never been more important or more challenging. We've seen consumer behavior change in our new, what some are calling a contactless economy. The adoption of digital platforms has been rapidly accelerated. Omnichannel and app-driven engagement are really dominating the way that customers are interacting with their suppliers and vendors and companies they do business with. Making a connection with your customers, whether you're in B2C or B2B, requires a strong data foundation and a responsive data strategy. Connecting the right data is where it all starts. So my message is really for IT leaders, enterprise and data architects, and analytics professionals. You are absolutely critical to improving customer acquisition, retention, and customer service and experience. Your company and your customers need you. Welcome to weaving an enterprise data fabric that covers your customer 360 requirements. I'm Chaz Kilt, Senior Director of Industry Solutions Marketing and Corporate Communications at Reltio. My guest today is Noel Yuhana, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester. Noel covers big data, data warehouses, data fabric, cloud, big data integration, data management, and other topics designed for enterprise architecture professionals and data architects. So a lot of data experience there. Today we're going to talk about a handful of things, and the flow will be kind of like this. We're going to talk about the importance of building a foundation of master data, interaction, transaction, and third-party data, overcoming barriers to supporting data and analytics platforms. Noel will take us through Forrester's data fabric reference architecture, which I think will be of interest to our technical audience today. He'll also describe the key business value and benefits of having a data fabric, particularly around integration and collaboration. And then I'll take over at that point in time and put the Reltio story in the context of connected customer data before beginning a Q&A with Noel directly. So with all that said, welcome, Noel. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks
Fantastic.
for having me on this webinar. Yeah,
glad to have you. Well, let's start by putting today's conversation in the context of COVID-19 and the economic disruption that really businesses across the world are contending with now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is definitely things have changed a lot, right? I mean, if you look at it, when we started off this year, right? I guess we would not have realized or imagined that we would run into a pandemic during the course of this year. It has changed our lives, right? It has changed the way we work as well. I don't think people were very accustomed to working from home, but definitely it required a lot of adjustments to be made. And, based on feedback we are getting from customers, they definitely have adjusted towards the process. A lot of people had to make some adjustments because no one actually was really completely geared up for doing a kind of remote work, So definitely itself was a big change. And in fact, I used to travel a lot, actually. I used to travel every other week, actually, as being an analyst, and it definitely required some adjustments to be made as well, right? So definitely things are not the same as what they used to be pre-pandemic. Now, what's interesting is, the pandemic is not over as yet, right? And we still have definitely these different phases of where we are on this scenarios. Obviously, phase one was the earlier this year until mid-March, where there was no social awareness, no social distancing going on, no awareness going on. There was a rapid spread of the disease earlier on itself. And then obviously the social distancing, stay at home, shelter-in-place mandates were enforced, which obviously controlled a lot of the spread itself. And now we are in this third phase, which is call it the management phase. And we are defining this process and protocols to defining how the work is going to change. If at all we go back to the offices, how are we going to go to the restaurants, right? Or even meet or connect with people as well, right? So those things are not going to be the same as what they used to be. Definitely, we have to have a protocol. We definitely have to establish some sort of management scenarios here, and this will go on for a while, until we come on to the fourth phase, right? When we have this vaccine available, hopefully sooner than later. And if the phase four starts like in April or maybe sooner, I guess, we'll definitely go back to where we were to some degree, right? Not necessarily the same context, right? I believe consumer buying, organizational management is going to create a new normal, right? I mean, there's going to be some newer changes in the way we're going to be doing businesses as well. This is what we're seeing from a Forrester perspective when we interact with all these different customers out there. What's interesting is, a lot of companies are today under pressure, right? I mean, this pandemic is real as we know it. It's still across the globe in different regions. And, there has been an economic impact as we know it. The last recession in 2008, there was obviously a lot of discussion we had with customers around, trying to use open source technologies and trying to actually use certain other technologies as well, right? In this pandemic, we are seeing a lot of traction around the cloud. Definitely, cloud obviously plays a big role. People are moving to the cloud more aggressively because it offers you this agile platform, which obviously is critical, especially when you do these new generation of business initiatives they're trying to roll out. And what we've seen on an average that CIOs, are being asked to cut at least 10% of their budgets during this course of the 2020. It's mostly driven towards the hardware and infrastructure side of the equations. Definitely, we are still seeing not as much of an impact towards the data and analytics strategy, the data management strategies. People are still investing in those. Definitely, that's a critical component. In fact, actually, right, data and analytics, I think, is more important today than ever before because we want to be able to connect those customers. We want to be able to drive business success with those initiatives. And that's going to be a critical driving force for these organizations. So when we speak to customers today, they talk about data management. They talk about real-time initiatives. They talk about how are we going to drive better success with these customers of ours. So maybe it says B2B or B2C initiatives that people are embarking, right? And, if we obviously had customers before, right? The difference today is the customers are a bit different than what they would normally would be because people are looking for different choices of their products because products may not be available. So there's a bit different kind of a degree. You need to understand your customers a lot more closely than what you've done in the past, right? So, and that's why the data and analytics strategy becomes critical for driving value for these customers, employees, and stakeholders. But also, real-time initiatives, as I mentioned, is one of the important things which people are investing in today, absolutely. And this leads into this whole notion of having a data foundation, right? So what exactly is the data foundation, right? Data foundation obviously creates this whole data management kind of a scenario where you really have to drive, if I'm trying to do connections of data, right, for customer data, I need to connect. How do I do that, right? You can't just move data from A to B and start connecting data, right? It's not that simple, right? There's a lot of things which goes behind the scenes, and that's the reason why the foundation is critical, especially if you look at all these data management components, right? You got data quality, right? Integration, transformation, and you're going to see all this, the yellow box, the yellow circle actually contains all of these different kind of terminologies within the data management context, which are critical to driving success, right? Including preparation, security, governance, and what have you, right? And if you don't really have these components, obviously you don't really have that complete 360-degree view of the customer or trying to do customer intelligence, right? And because of the fact that you have to have all these components together, it really creates the value for connected data, for trusted data, for real-time data, but also single version of truth. Like, as I mentioned, real-time is critical today, right? Not just for the pandemic scenarios we are seeing for different organizations trying to isolate people or identify locations of hotspots, but also, real-time data is also important for customer in terms of, I want to buy this product or services, what's the best things available in a real-time manner, right? I mean, those are difficult decisions to make for an organization. Like if you're a retailer, for example, trying to sell these products, what kind of things is the next best solution or service or product do you offer your client, right? And that needs to be done in seconds, in real time. That's what you're talking about, right? And those are difficult architectures to build. I'll talk about architectures a bit later, but this is exactly where we are heading towards, right? If you look at it, a single version of the truth is critical, right? I mean, more than 30, 40% of data in an organization is duplicated because if you make copies of data, and when you make copies of data, you'll lead to inconsistent, untrusted data, so to speak. Because the fact that you have all these copies of data, you really need to actually have to look at a single version of the truth for customer data, for business data, for product data, right? For employee data, and that's critical, right? So that's why the foundation becomes critical, and connected data is a very important discussion point because you have to make connections. A lot of data is there in an organization. Guess what? It's not connected. Only half of your data sometimes is connected. The other half is not connected because we are in silos somewhere. And then cloud obviously has all of these different SaaS solutions, social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook data sitting there, right? How do you connect those data sets as well, right? So those are things of important discussions of how to address those. So in order to build a stronger data foundation, as mentioned, you not only need this whole data management kind of a framework, but you also have to look at data, right? Data is critical. What kind of data are you going to really integrate as well, right? So you got system of record, which is critical, the master data, right? We talk about master data, about product, about customer, right? About partners and products and others. So you got to look at the data from these different scenarios, and master data is a critical component to really feed into this data foundation layer, right? For data management layer to drive these connected data, trusted data, real-time insights data, right? And system of engagement, right? When you go and click on a website, those click streams are very important because you want to know exactly what the customer is clicking on as well, right? So system of engagement, whether you're doing it from the mobile, from your website, logs which are being analyzed. So it's the interaction things, right? When you go to a grocery and you're touching upon certain products, they would want to know exactly what are things you were actually looking for as well, right? So the system of engagement is critical. This data may not even exist in any repository. That's the problem, right? So you have to really look at those elements as well. This may be in log files, clickstream data in files, other files as well. System of transactions is also important. Like, what all things did you purchase over the last few months or years as a trend? You would actually then be offered upsell, cross-sell opportunities as well, right? So data is also important. So a combination of this data drives what we call a better customer intelligence, customer 360, what have you, right? So this is what we see organizations build up on as well, right? If you look at it, data is often in silos that fails to create that customer 360, right? We got, as I mentioned, we got data sitting in when you call the support personnel, right? Whenever you call this, you're chatting with this support personnel for any product or service. Are they capturing those details about what you're really asking for, right? There could be certain churn, right, which happened as a result of that conversation, which may not have been captured. How do you blend that data with the customer data itself, right? With other types of system of record data as well, right? How do you blend in those data with other types of engagements as well, right? So that becomes very important. Things like marketing data or order management data, sales data, right? and also social data as well. As I mentioned, Twitter has got a lot of data that you may actually want to analyze as well. Most recently, over the last 5-10 years, we have been getting a lot of social data. And I think you can't miss upon that social data as part of your customer 360, right? So the bigger problem comes back is that, okay, I got all these data sets. I got external data. I got internal data. I got all these data sets which may not be sitting in a repository. I got all this interaction data. How do you blend all those things together to drive a customer 360, right? What would be that solution that can do that, right? And I think that is, and you can do that manually, trying to do this with hundreds of engineers, I guess, and developers working on it, right? Or look for kind of architectures and solutions, right? So one example here is a data fabric, right? And I'll talk more about what data fabric means later on. But what we've seen is that customers who are engaging on this building, this customer 360, requires a modern system that can integrate all customer data, right? Not just data that existed in one single database of yours, like a CRM and ERP, but also there's a lot of variety of data that needs to integrate as well, right? For doing all kind of social analysis, customer intelligence, customer churn analysis, behavioral analysis, sentiment analysis. There's a lot of these things goes along with this, right? So customer data becomes critical. In fact, we've talked about big data, right? For the last how many years? Like 7-8 years, we talked about big data. And 60% of all big data deployments were tied towards customer data. Why? Well, customer is important, right? Customer is the most important thing for any organization today, right? And customer data is important, right? And you have to blend those, integrate those to drive a better success, right? And this is what customers really have to embark on, right? I mean, you can't really have a platform which is so siloed, which really doesn't drive intelligence, right? Which is definitely a big issue. So what exactly is a fabric? So this is a Forrester definition of a data fabric is dynamically, that's what's a very important point, dynamically orchestrating disparate data sources intelligently, securely, in a self-service manner, leveraging various data platforms to integrate trusted data to supporting various applications. And analytics and use cases. Now, we have been talking about this for 4 or 5 years now at Forrester, and this evolved over the last many years because of the fact that there was a need for having a fabric-like architecture in an organization towards integrating, federating, orchestrating this data of customer data, right? And other type of use cases as well. It's not necessarily customer data, but other use cases. But customer data, as I mentioned, is one of the most important use case in any organization. The more important thing is it's more self-service driven, right? That's the most important element. It has to be driven self-servicely, but also in a more intelligent manner, which is what this is all about. So at a high level, let's look at an architectural view about what this fabric looks like, right? And if you look at the fabric, we talked about system of transactions, systems of records, systems of engagements coming in as the sources in the cloud environment, for example. And they are normally fed into a data lake, right? I mean, this is exactly because data may be huge into petabytes. It requires integration, it needs orchestration, it needs classification, it needs governance, it needs metadata and security, right? All these attributes to driving that data towards a more condensed format, like an aggregated format, right? Imagine trying to looking at 100 million records on your screen. That could be a nightmare, right? So systems could be done automatically to integrate this data in a very simplified manner as well. And then cloud data warehouses are important as well. Cloud data warehouses drive, again, the success of integrating data and providing that analytics that's needed. Now, the fabric is that semantic layer, as we talked about, that actually brings data not only from the lake, and you can have multiple lakes, by the way. People are having 7, 8 lakes now today because of compliances, GDPR regulations, and other security reasons, but also for domain knowledge as well. They may be having different domains within lakes. But you can also integrate with cloud data sources, but also other sources to create a semantic layer. Semantic layer provides you that holistic view from integration, transformation, governance, catalog, and this really drives that customer 360, which you're trying to do, like customer sentiment analysis, next best action, cross-sell, upsell, social networking, churn analysis, and other things as well. So, if you look at this framework, people obviously build these frameworks from ground up, and they spend not months, years trying to build it. And that's the drawback, right? No one's got time anymore to have spent years trying to build this. You have to look for a solution that can actually integrate, tie those things together, and run this in days and weeks. That's the goal. I mean, and days and weeks doesn't mean that you're done with days and weeks. You gradually build a building block from ground up with a few blocks, and you try to build some of the data, right? You start to integrate some data here, some data records, some engagement data, and you start to work on it in days. And then you add more data, and it's a journey, right? We are on a customer 360. It's a journey. It's not like, okay, I'm going to take 10 sources and I'm done. My project is done. I'm done next month. No, customer 360 is a journey where you build these data sources and integrate this on an ongoing basis, because your data is changing. Your data sources are changing. Your data sources are adding new sources coming in. You'll probably have tomorrow a new social networking application running. We still need to integrate those as well, by the way, right? So you're future-proofing those architecture as well, which is critical for these fundamentally the most important thing for customers' success. So this is the overall reference architecture, which I kind of put together 4 or 5 years ago, but this has obviously evolved over the last 4 or 5 years, which talks about different layers of this data fabric. On the left end, you have data management layer, which includes all of the metadata, the catalog, the security, governance, processing, quality, lineage, and policies. And AI machine learning is a critical component. AI machine learning because you want to automate and provide the intelligence from end-to-end perspective. You look at this it's like a vertical bar, and the reason why it's a vertical bar is because it goes across these different layers of data management, whether it's ingestion, processing, orchestration, discovery, and global access of data as well, right? So it's not just one single layer. It's dealing with all these different layers in end-to-end scenarios, right? Now, the good thing with this model is that, you are trying to bring this end-to-end platform from an ingestion, transformation, governance perspective, but also having this model drive better success, like real-time insights, right? Imagine driving real-time insights is a pain. What's funny about it is that when I speak to customers on talking about real-time, they think, well, real-time to us means like 24 hours old data, right? 24 hours old data. That's what real-time means. Why? Because your traditional legacy platforms are not really geared up to driving those new insights and real-time insights. That's the biggest problem right there, right? And this is what the fabric is all doing, is trying to integrate those data from the source systems, whether system of engagement, system of records, system of transactions on different locations, like including cloud, comes together and transforms, integrates, prepares, and curates this data, and you model it as well. Now, graph also is an important element here. If you look at it in a discovery layer, which blends in the data to automate the process of integration a lot quicker. Right? Imagine trying to integrate hundreds of sources. Can you manually write code, Python code, Java code? Yeah, you ask a developer, you probably come back and say, okay, give me 10 days, I will have your programs ready. Well, that's not acceptable today in an organization. We need to have results in minutes, right? A new source comes in, how are you going to blend those data sources? Well, give it to developers, well, may take a time, right? And that's the bigger problem. Today, time to value is critical. No one has got time to spend months trying to do use cases. I know 10 years ago, we used to do that, right? We used to build applications for 6 months and with 100 engineers. Well, you can't do that anymore. So things have changed to this layer. Getting into more details about there are 6 layers of the fabric. One of the important layers of the fabric is the fact that ingestion layer, right? This is the ingestion layer which provides you that in connections of data, whether it's structured, unstructured, semi-structured data, is all integrated in real time, near real time from the source systems. And now we have cloud sources like Salesforce, right? We got LinkedIn, we got Twitter, we got Facebook, we got other types of data sources running on Amazon and Google and Azure and what have you, right? We got to integrate those data sources, right? And the more important thing is you want to integrate this data without writing much lines of code, zero code, low code initiative, right? And no one wants to write so much lines of code anymore. Right? That's the most important thing right there, the ingestion layer. The processing layer is all about processing the data, right? Whether you're using data lakes and object store and other environments like Kafka, Flume, Hive, to process the data, to persist the data as well, right? You have to obviously use different types of components. It's not necessarily one size fits all sometimes, depending on the type of data you're dealing with. You may be dealing with a lot of unstructured data. You may be processing it in a different context altogether, right? Orchestration is another layer which integrates this data itself, right? Orchestration is obviously transforming the data and providing you that level of integration, which is critical. And then you got discovery with modeling, preparation, curation, virtualization. This again is an important element, especially modeling, right? Imagine modeling data which is unstructured data becomes more kind of a challenging itself, right? Because it's not so trivial to do the modeling of data, which is unstructured in this context, right? And then you got data management intelligence layer, which obviously provides you that context of security, governance, quality, lineage, and the access layer, which we should not forget, which is a layer of access to all these different analytical scenarios or customer churn analysis and what have you, right? From that perspective. So if you look at Graph, right, Graph plays a big role, we believe. In fact, it's been expanding a lot. And so look for solutions that offer graph engines. And why Graph? As I mentioned, if you're connecting 10 sources or 5 sources, it may not be an issue as much. Trying to integrate tens of and hundreds of sources, it can become a nightmare because those connection points of data is difficult to do because you write complex programs in anymore, right? Graph actually takes away because it is the shortest path to connecting data. It also uses the nodes and edges and properties to discover connected data, to discover relationships of data, and also drives real-time customer 360 to customer insights as well, right? So this is what we're seeing. Customer 360, you need to know about the customer, not only about the customer, what they're buying and selling, but you also need to know about their friends and families as well. Why? Because they also may be part of their influence on decision-making of product and services as well, right? So you got to expand that portfolio of things. And that's a very important direction we're seeing customers do. And that relationships can only come out not through programs, through some intelligence like graph technology, which drives that success, right? Now, if you look at it in terms of Fabric, it's not just about integration. Right? We just talked about integration, but Fabric does a lot more. It is trusted data it delivers. It drives consistent data. This is critical. It's agile, responds quickly enough to business needs quickly enough. Right? You don't really have to spend hours in trying to build these platforms. It's self-service from the business perspective, which means the business users can leverage the data themselves for creating the dashboards and reports themselves, as opposed to relying on IT organizations trying to do that, right? This is what we've done in the last decades, right? Trying to have IT build reports. But what about business users? I want to create my own dashboards, my own reports. Can I do that, right? And this is a big need driving the next trend in the coming years. Self-service IT is more about automation of data management functions, which is critical as well, right? Data management functions are going to be organized and automated as much as possible. As I mentioned, when you're deploying these environments, how quickly can you do it? Provisioning, management, administration, but also security governance needs to be more self-service as well, right? From an automation perspective. Real-time, we talked about real-time, obviously, is a big critical component. And dynamic integration, not integration that's static. That's batch-oriented, which is what we have done for decades, right? This is more dynamic. I want to integrate like this sources like in these few seconds right now. Can I do that? Right? And that level of understanding of metadata master data, it becomes critical, right, in success, right? So what are the typical use cases we see customers driving towards the fabric? Well, as I mentioned, Customer 360 is the most important element we're seeing. In fact, big data, as I mentioned, right, almost 2/3 of the big data deployments were around Customer 360. There's a reason, right? Customer personalization, giving you personalized experiences for upsell, cross-sell, for customer intelligence, targeted marketing. But there's also other use cases we're seeing around fraud detection, risk analytics, healthcare, financial services. So the list goes on and on. So Fabric, you start with one of the use cases, and then you build to drive the second and the third and the fourth use case. You don't have to say, okay, Fabric is only just one use case. No, you can have multiple use cases. But the good thing is you don't have to wait 6 months getting the ROI from the Fabric. You can get an ROI from the Fabric in days. And that's exactly the value proposition, which what people are kind of building on this notion. And it enables data sharing, collaboration, right? I mean, I think if you look at it from that perspective, certainly a lot of people like partners want to use data marts, right? I mean, you want to create data marts so that people can collaborate. Business users can collaborate as well, right? So the semantic layer we are building through a Fabric creates out also these data marts, so which can be leveraged for people, for end users, line of businesses, but also partners, which is a very important direction in the making as well, right, for what we've seen. And then that data fabric creates this business value opportunities and revenue models for customer data, right? I mean, I think if you look at it from that perspective, the data fabric can drive upsell, cross-sell. Today, some of the leading organizations have either built it themselves, but also are looking at fabric-like architectures. In fact, there was a couple of these retailers I spoke to recently who have leveraged a fabric-like architecture to driving the upsell, cross-sell opportunities, to be able to know what the customer likes and dislikes. Right? You don't want to be sending those emails to a customer who doesn't like those products. They're probably going to shut down that email. I mean, that email from your organization, I guess, right? So you have to know exactly, and that's the difficult thing. Imagine if you had 100 million customers. For each and every customer, how would you like to know what they like and dislike? And that's a tall order, right? In terms of how you blend this through a fabric architecture. Customer experience is important to identifying products and services that are meeting the needs for customers, especially in this pandemic. Sometimes people are looking at alternative choices here. What choices you give to them is important as well. You need to understand those customers. And also predicting churn. Right now, obviously, the customer is trying out different solutions, services. You got to look at behavioral analysis and also look at all of these insights right away. So, and choosing the right customer data management solutions is critical, right? I mean, what kind of things you got to look for? Customer 360 is important, whether it's from automation, low code. You got to look at all these attributes. Cloud services, I think, is the way to go because it's a faster time to value for customer data management scenarios. They are pre-built with template and intelligence, right? In fact, most of the cloud deployments today, we're seeing cloud customer 360 deployments today we're seeing are happening in the cloud. Why? Because it's a lot quicker, faster. They provide you all these facilities to drive that. On-premises obviously is existing as well, but obviously we don't see as a higher degree of adoption in on-premises as much today. Hybrid obviously is another option where your data may not be moving to the cloud because of security reasons, regulatory reasons. Those also are options as well for customers to choose from. So what are the recommendations? Accelerate business use cases with data fabric strategy, right? I mean, I think the more important thing here is if you're trying to do this customer 360, definitely look at a data fabric strategy because it can really help you accelerate those use cases. You don't want to spend 6 months and a year trying to do these deployments. And time to value is of essence, right, today. Focus on real-time initiatives, which is the sweet spot for data fabric, right? Trying to integrate, blend in those different types of system of engagement, system of record, system of transaction data in a more cohesive, integrated manner, right? That's exactly what the fabric can do this quickly enough, which is important for customers. Create a data fabric team to succeed. No, don't just put it off as like a small project and have like developers work on it or engineers it's not going to go too far. I mean, you got to have a team of enterprise data architects, developers, data security, business analysts, and data engineers working together, and keep security in mind from start, because you're dealing with fabric data. A lot of sensitive data as well could exist as a part of that. So definitely look into that perspective right from start, and leverage Fabric to automate integration, self-service capabilities to supporting this real-time customer initiatives, right? As I mentioned, it can drive a lot of value quickly enough. Hence, you have to look at all these capabilities. A lot of innovation is happening also in the Fabric. This is a new generation, the modern generation of architectures what people are building in financial services, in healthcare, and retailer sectors, in manufacturing sectors. So definitely look at the Fabric as definitely an architecture for your organization as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
Noel, that's really fantastic. I think you did an excellent job of connecting the technologies for data integration, data management with the business value. At this point, I definitely want to go back and explore some of the topics that you had touched on. I certainly would like to, as parting commentary, get your advice to the audience on an action item that they can take immediately. But in the meantime, I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes to talk about where Reltio fits into the scheme of things here. And so I'm just going to have to do this. And Steve, you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Just present at the bottom.
There we go. All right, bear with us, folks. Trying a new platform today.
Looks great.
It's fantastic. So as you saw and heard from Noel, Enterprise Data Fabric plays in a lot of different areas: IoT, operational, customer analytics. But Customer 360 is really Reltio's sweet spot. And we've been talking about helping our customers win in the experience economy for, I guess, the better part of a year now, or pretty close to. Because we really saw, and we completely agree with Noel on this, that customer data is your most important data. And I think the points that Noel made about what constitutes a customer profile demonstrates really clearly that it is not monolithic data. If you really want to think about it writ large, customer data is all of your important data. It's your financial data, your accounting data, your supply chain data, etc. But despite the fact that we are in a much different economy, as you no doubt hear and read all the time, COVID's still dominating the news cycles, experience is still where companies have an opportunity to differentiate and win. It doesn't matter that we're in a contactless economy or a social distance economy or whatever you want to call it. Experience still matters. The point, and why we wanted to share our perspective with you today, is that how you deliver those experiences is what's changed. So let me give you a couple of quick examples that I think are pretty approachable. Peloton, which is doing very well in the COVID economy, understood long before any of us heard about this coronavirus that they weren't just selling bikes. They were selling community, and they're selling content. And they've used the opportunity with people sheltering in place and athletic clubs closing down to expand their service offerings by providing yoga classes online, by providing high-intensity interval training or HIIT classes online. More recently, if you look at a company like Lululemon, very well recognized, arguably the top brand in sports apparel and athleisure apparel, they purchased a company called Mirror a couple of weeks ago because they recognize that they need to provide an experience to their customers and a reason for their customers to keep coming back to buy more Lululemon, even though they're not going to their gym or their health club. And it gives Lululemon an opportunity to provide real-time interactions at the point of engagement. So that's kind of at a high level, how I wanted to introduce this section today to kind of plant that seed. So if you think about, and this isn't advancing, there we go. If you think about this idea of a customer 360 profile and how it supports customer experiences, you compare it against things like basic MDM, which is fine for matching and merging and bringing some attributes together and managing reference data, and usually doing that in batch, as Noel pointed out. But to have a really comprehensive and accurate and current, which are all different things, I think we recognize that, to have those current connected customer profiles, it requires so much more. And Noel touched on a lot of things that we often talk about at Reltio, and actually included one other piece of a data point for thought, which is it's interaction data, it's transaction data. You've got to have third-party data. That could be things like credit reports, for example, and even social data. And Noel touched on this concept of clickstream data and how clickstream data really should be part of a connected customer profile. It's really important. And legacy MDM wasn't designed to do any of this. And it wasn't designed to do another important thing, which is the ability to change attributes in real time as customers evolved. Now, Noel talked about connected data in terms of dynamic orchestration, and the same applies when you think about a connected customer profile. Your customers are going to change. They may change week to week. They change very quickly. As we're trying out new experiences, and maybe you didn't like Grubhub and you're gonna go and try Postmates. Companies need to be ready to respond to that, and real time is absolutely critical. Noel also pointed out that in his view, the biggest problem with legacy systems is the inability to deal in real time. Customers want to have a high quality experience at the point of engagement, and real time data is the only way to do that. In addition to that, what Reltio provides is a cloud native and SaaS pure play. So while we partner with customer data platform or CDP vendors, they're excellent for analytics, they're excellent for activation, but they don't integrate all the necessary data. So I just wanted to kind of position Reltio Connected Customer 360 within the enterprise data architecture that Noel so well described for us. So very quickly moving on, because I do want to leave time for Q&A. Our customers are using Reltio Connected Customer 360 for some really important things. We call them business transformations because they truly are substantive shifts that you see within enterprises in B2C and B2B. Number one is this concept of responsive data management. And again, I'll play back some of the words that we heard from Noel: real time and dynamic. And responsive data management is about not just the ability to change your business model now when we're all feeling the pinch of the economic recession driven by COVID, but how do we plan for moving forward? How do we change our model when the next thing comes along? And let's hope the next thing is a positive thing. We're dealing with a negative now, but maybe we see some positive opportunities. How do you change your business on a dime? How are you responsive? How are you agile, as Noel said a little bit earlier, to take advantage of, capitalize on those opportunities? Our customers are also rapidly moving towards digital innovation. I heard Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame, and he's also a CNBC contributor, talk about the fact that he has personally seen in his business portfolio 5 years worth of digital transformation occur in 5 months. I heard a Goldman Sachs lead analyst, their lead internet analyst, just last week talk about the fact that they are seeing 2 years within 2 months. So about the same ratio. It's happening fast is the takeaway point. Hyper-personalization, this is all about knowing your customer, and we'll talk more about this in a minute. Noel brought up the point that if you're sending offers and emails to a customer who, and it's irrelevant to them, you're sending coupons for a roast beef sandwich to somebody who's a vegetarian, you've probably lost yourself a customer. Customer centricity. This is related to, but different than personalization. It's about actually putting customer at the center of your business processes, and we could certainly help you with that as well. And then lastly, and I'll move on a bit here, direct to consumer. Some really, I think, straightforward examples of this are pharmaceutical companies marketing directly to customers rather than through traditional channels. Scott's Lawn Care, for example, products that I use, I get ads from them saying, essentially saying you don't need to go to one of the big box stores to purchase these products or venture out of your house. We'll ship them to you. That's about customer centricity, direct to consumer. And then lastly, we talk about this concept of compliance. It's about privacy and consent, and it goes far beyond opt-in and opt-out. It's about compliance with mature standards at this point, like GDPR, and emerging standards like the California Consumer Privacy Act. And we're, certainly sure to see more of those moving forward. You should also think about this in the context of data sovereignty, which Noel also touched on by other terms. If there's data in a particular industry, financial services is a very good example, where data cannot go offshore. This is one way to make sure that happens. In terms of managing complexity, I am going to very quickly go through this. We take 6 steps to simplifying what I think you'll agree is a very complex ecosystem that goes into making that connected customer profile, that 360-degree view of the customer. It begins with connecting customer data across all those silos in which it resides, and then doing, your basic matching, merging, creating those master data profiles. It's all done there. But then we go beyond legacy MDM by enriching those profiles with the transaction, interaction, the social data, the third-party data that we talked about a little bit ago, credit reports on the consumer side, Dun and Bradstreet reports if you're in a B2B environment. And step 3 is about discovering and visualizing relationships and understanding how a customer is connected to products, to a household, to organizations, what device they're using, how they're connected to other people. And we like to talk about this as, an analog for this being LinkedIn, where you can see how a person is connected to other people, to an organization, whether that be a school or employers, certain skill sets that they might have. But using our connected graph technology, where Noel also did a drill down into graph and how that is really important, that is something that is unique and very different about Reltio Connected Customer 360. And the last couple of steps here, once you've got that data aggregated, we prepare it so that you can use it in your downstream analytics or for activation by platforms such as CDP. So really important there. And then the last 2 steps are the consent and privacy, and then permission. So step number 6 is really interesting. It's about contextual. So permission levels are granted based on what your role is in the company, and how that data is presented to you, what that user interface looks like, is going to be based on your role. So with that said, I do have a bunch of questions I want to revisit with you, Noel. The first one is, how important do you consider scalability and flexibility for a data management platform, and why?
Yeah, I mean, scalability, flexibility is critical, right? I mean, first of all, the platform needs to be dynamic. In the sense that you are adding new sources, you are actually adding a lot of data. So it needs to be scalable in the sense that you have to have more sources and more integration points, but also the usage of the data itself will be coming in from different applications in context, right? Not just customer insights and analytics you're trying to do, but also applications what people are building on top of that as well. You can have API connections to the fabric as well, right? So it's a combination of those things which requires scalability. So you need to have a scalable kind of platform. You need to have it modular in the sense that it can scale. In other words, you may have you may be running it on a 16 CPU machine right now, but you may need 64 CPUs in the coming months, perfectly fine. Or better still, go to the cloud, which has endless scalability from a storage, from the memory, from a processing unit perspective as well. And this becomes a very important strategy for organizations going forward, right? Because when you have a customer platform, like a data platform, it really drives a lot of the different types of interactions for other types of developers and analysts within your organizations to leverage the data. And until now, we have had very generalized data platforms, which doesn't serve the purpose of Customer 360, for example, right? And having flexibility is critical as well, right? Because the fact that you want to be able to have this flexible to incorporating, introducing, integrating these new sources of data, these new dimensions of data. Not just data which is limited to what we know of, but what of data. There could be a lot of data which may be coming in the pipeline in the coming days and months ahead of us, And those data also need to be integrated as well, part of your customer 360 journey as well, right? So you need to be flexible. It needs to be agile towards supporting these newer generation of growth. Not just, okay, I've built my platform, I'm done for the next 5 years. No, that's not the right thing, right approach to take. You have to take an approach which is more flexible and agile as part of the fabric itself.
Interesting. No, thank you for that response. I'm curious to know what your perspective is on the ability of, let's look at, the top three models, pure cloud, managed service, or on-prem. Do either or all of those have an advantage over the others in terms of being able to deliver that scalability and flexibility?
Yeah, I mean the cloud obviously, on-premises doesn't have that flexibility and scalability. As mentioned, if you know ahead of time what your requirements are, on-premises works fine, but that's normally not the case. Most of the deployments today, almost 80 to 85% of deployments today for MDM, for data fabric like solutions are in the cloud, are getting into the cloud right now. Why? Because it offers you that flexibility, scalability, and agility. And the fact is managed services also is important as well. Sometimes, managed services environments obviously drives a lot of success for end users, for business users who are trying to build these platforms as well, right? So, I mean, so what are you guys seeing in Reltio, I guess, in terms of the deployments of MDM?
Well, we're 100% in the cloud, and oftentimes, all the time, we're in competitive deals. Oftentimes, it may be a company looking at a solution for the first time, and they're considering on-prem or considering cloud. But many times, we're actually replacing legacy MDM systems, or looking at opportunities where customers have a CDP in place and recognize that they need more data integration capabilities than a CDP alone can deliver. And we dovetail very nicely with those types of solutions. So yeah, they're obviously, anyone who's talking to us is at least interested enough to have a conversation with a SaaS provider, because not only are there the benefits which you recognize, and I think the entire audience recognizes that cloud provides, like business continuity and being evergreen, which are generic across cloud offerings, pure cloud offerings. But because of that time to value that you spoke of, time to deployment means faster time to value. So that's often what we're seeing.
Yep, cool.
Yeah, one thing I didn't plan on talking about today, but you mentioned it, and it's something that we are talking about and actually doing within Reltio at this stage, which is this idea of a customer API. Bringing customer data in through that particular model. I'd like to get your thinking about what are you seeing in terms of adoption of customer APIs? You talked about needing to bring customer data into so many different processes and applications. What kind of traction are you seeing in the market for those APIs now?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's interesting is that a lot of people are building these microservices-based applications. And these microservices-based applications are demanding that need of integrated data, right? Imagine if you're trying to build a microservices application and you have to touch upon 10 different databases and data repositories. It becomes a bit more challenging because the data may not be consistent and trusted to begin with, but also not real-time maybe, because the data may be sourced itself from somewhere else. So we are seeing a greater demand for having this notion of a common data layer for microservices-based application, whether you're writing Python code, C# code, or Java code, or other type of application you're writing on these APIs to drive that. Number one. Number two is also you want to have these APIs becoming more integrated in the sense that it's more self-service driven, in the sense that you don't have to write a lot of code, right? I mean, if the APIs itself could formulate a lot of integration of the logic and processes within that API context, you minimize these deployments of these or building these applications from ground up, right? Imagine writing a lines of code for getting data interactions and trying to do the processing, the transformation. That'll take you days trying to build those, right? But APIs, you can maybe just abstract those data logic and processes through API common layer, and only call these APIs and that abstracted layer, which really helps a lot. Why? Because it can provide you that context of integration, transformation, governance, and security all built into the API for these applications. So we've seen a big trend, especially as people are building these cloud services. They're trying to leverage a lot of these APIs just to, and APIs not in traditional sense, what we've done, but in APIs in a modern sense, where we're trying to have this abstracted layer, integrated layer, which can drive all these applications a lot quicker than what we had normally done.
Yeah, thanks for that. We certainly see strong interest in our customer base, and also in our partner ecosystem as well. So we hope that continues. There's a lot of excitement about that for all the reasons that you had touched on. I know we're running short on time, but I do want to take advantage of having you on the call with us today. For those who aren't aware, analysts like Noel, while they do spend a great deal of time conducting research, writing reports, occasionally doing activities such as this and speaking at conferences, much of his time is spent talking to people like you. I'm talking to the audience, talking to people like you who are in IT roles, technical roles within large enterprises, fielding questions from them and dispensing advice, helping them go through purchase processes and thinking through stuff. So with that said, Noel, because time is short, I would like to know, what is the most prevalent question you get from end users about data management, and how do you answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of inquiries on data management. I speak to about 3 to 4 customers every day. And these are large customers, mid-sized customers across the globe. And all kinds of data management challenges and issues are out there. And I think the big one is obviously the silos of data, right? The data silos is a big issue, especially when you have all these different sources of data coming together, right? You got SaaS sources, you got all these different cloud sources going on. How do you bridge them together to provide that customer intelligence, customer 360? So silos, I would say, is definitely one of the bigger challenge for organizations. The other ones are obviously, security and governance, which I think everyone is facing against, like GDPR regulations or the California protection kind of a compliance. These regulations are definitely impacting a lot of these organizations about how do you manage data within an organization, or how do you manage the data in a manner that you don't really have to go against the compliance requirements as much, right? So definitely compliance is putting a pressure, and especially with this new generation of applications they're building in these circumstances. So I would say, security and governance obviously plays again a big role for that as well. And then there's also this notion of having this real-time data, right? I mean, real-time is a big issue. Our legacy platforms, our traditional platforms are not gearing up towards driving those insights quickly enough for organizations, right? So real-time is a big challenge. How do you build a platform that can drive real-time insights, real-time analytics, real-time applications that's needing these operational data sets, right? If I'm doing customer churn analysis in real time, imagine you're calling a telco, and a telco actually wants to know, like, what's the issue with your subscription and all good stuff. There could be a churn kind of analysis being done in seconds, right? I mean, can you do that? It's so difficult to do that kind of a notion, right? And writing programs for those complex scenarios becomes a very, very difficult scenario, right? Which is why people are looking for some of these improved insights as well. So what do you guys see from a Reltio perspective,
Yeah, so we're seeing very much what you've just described. It's really we talk about it in the context of the transformations, which we shared a little bit earlier. They know they need to have more robust, rich, comprehensive customer profiles, because so much is actually driven through those profiles. And the challenges they face are they're dealing with legacy systems that are brittle. If they need to change attributes, it requires professional services, or to have somebody on their team with very special skill sets on a certain family of software, for example. And changing attributes can literally take take months. You know, we have a large pharmaceutical company, for example, who had multiple instances in the high double digits of a legacy MDM system, and they had a new use case, and the recommendation they got was, well, roll out another instance. And so their reaction was, we're going to go look for another option, and that option became
Right.
Reltio. So we're seeing
Right.
very much the same thing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, hey, we're at the top of the hour. I wish we can keep going. You know, to our audience, thank you for staying with us. I hope you found this valuable. I look forward to talking to you all again in the near future. So have a great rest of the week. Be safe. If you want to learn more about Enterprise Data Fabric, I suggest if you're a Forrester client, set up an inquiry with Noel or a member of his team. If you want to find out more about Reltio Connected Customer 360 and how we can help you, lots of ways for us to reach you. Again, thanks a lot. We hope you found this helpful. Bye-bye, everyone.